Hi everybody, welcome back. In this video we're going to take our frames, we're going to compile them together in After Effects, we're going to add the audio and just make sure the audio's synced up with it, and we're going to export our final watchable animation or little mini movie. So basically once your sequence is finished rendering, so once that batch render process is finished, and down here you'll see a message that says rendering complete. If you take a look in your images folder in your project folder, you should end up with a file for each frame in your animation, like this. Okay. Now, this is not the sequence I just rendered. This is a sequence I had rendered previously, just so that I can more or less record these sessions back to back without having to wait, you know, possibly a few hours for the render to take place. So it's a little bit different, and you'll see a difference in the actual character model as well. But essentially, it's pretty much the equivalent of what you guys are doing. Okay, so we've got our image sequence that's ready to go, and if I take a look in my sound folder, I've got my sound file as well, because we'll need that. Obviously, because what we've done is rendered just still images, there's no way for After Effects to actually export the audio. Even if we were rendering a QuickTime movie directly out of Maya, it would not export or embed the audio in that file. We can import audio in as a cue or a reference for while we're animating, but your 3D software does not have any ability to export that audio out with your images. So it means that you've got to make sure you keep your audio file, and you need to manually link it with your images within software such as Final Cut Pro, After Effects, Adobe Premiere, Sony Vegas, anything that you can import audio into, and also an image sequence, and then export it out as a video. You can use whatever you're comfortable with. I tend to use After Effects because that's what I'm comfortable with, and it's a very easy process to do it, and that's what I'll be showing you guys how to do. But for those of you that are familiar with Final Cut Pro, for example, or Adobe Premiere, you can use those if you like as well. So let's jump over to After Effects. Okay, there we go. So for those of you that haven't used After Effects, this is what the interface looks like, and I'll give you a rough brief tour. Basically what we've got is the project tab here, and this is where you'll see a list of files that you import in. Those files could be things like QuickTime movies, they could be JPEG images or Photoshop PSD files, and also audio files as well, such as WAV files or .AIFs, or even MP3. The composition tab just here, or composition panel, this is where you'll see the basic image that you're working on. So this is sort of like Maya's viewport. You'll see your actual imagery in here. At the bottom we've got our render queue visible at the moment, but this is more or less the composition panel, and we can see, we will be able to see a timeline and then layers of imagery that we place in. And this is basically where we drag our image sequence and also our audio to synchronize them up within the timeline. And that's what we're going to be doing right now. So the first thing we need to do is we need to import our audio and also our image sequence. I'm going to start with the image sequence because we're dealing with more than one file there. So the basic process for this is, if you've got a folder, if you've got your actual project folder at hand, like I do, okay, so I've got my images in here, all right. The great thing with After Effects is that if you've already got this folder kind of floating around on your desktop, it actually makes it much quicker. So what I can do is I can drag the first frame from this folder directly into the project bin, and you can see you get this little copy sign next to your cursor. When you drop it, it'll load that frame in and you'll see a little picture of it. Okay, so what that's done is it's imported one picture. Now I can't use this, but what it's done is it's now basically making After Effects look at this folder. Okay, so this is where it's always, if you try and import another file, it's going to go straight to this folder. That's exactly what we're going to do now. So once that's dragged in, I just delete this. So I select it, and you can either drop it into the bin, or you can just select it and press the delete key. So now basically I've got the project is set to that folder. Now it's not kind of really the same as setting a project folder in Maya, okay, but you'll see what happens in a second. What I can do is go to File, Import, File. Or I can right click in the project bin just here and select Import File. The shortcut's Control or Command I. So let's do that. So when I do that, you can see here it pops up directly into my folder with my images. So what that means is I don't have to go clicking through tons of different folders in these little button, these little menus and scrolling through things on the Mac interface, for example, to find where my files are. It goes straight to it. All right. So sometimes it can be easier to do it that way. You can do it the regular way just by going File, Input, and then clicking through your different folders and looking for this folder. That's fine as well. So let's import this. I'll just set this to a list so we can see them more easily. What you need to do is select the first frame for your animation, just the first frame. So it needs to be the one that has 001 on it, just here. Okay, and you'll see down here it's got that name. I need to import as a footage. You've got a few options sometimes here depending on the type of file. It has to be footage, and this needs to be ticked. Now it might say for you guys, if you've done your exporting from Maya as JPEGs, it should say JPEG sequence, not Targa sequence. Okay, my files are as Targas with this. You guys will probably have JPEGs, as I instructed you to do in the last video. So that has to be ticked. We just press open. Now, normally for you guys, you shouldn't get this panel if you're importing JPEGs. It should just import straight away. I'm importing a Targa which has an alpha channel in it. That means transparency. I'm just going to leave it as it is. Actually, I'll ignore because I don't need it, the background. Removing. So basically what we end up with is this in the project bin. So the little icon is several pages stacked on top of one another. That tells you it's a sequence. Over here it tells us that it's a sequence that goes from frame 1 to frame 551. As I mentioned before, this is not the same file I rendered in the last video. This is one that I'd done previously, quite some time ago, and I actually rendered a larger sequence. Okay, and it's a different file format. The process is the same though. What I want to do with this now is create a composition with a timeline. So what I do is I click and drag this item onto this composition button. So this is the make a new composition button. So by dragging this onto here, it sets up a composition which is the exact same duration and the exact same frame size as the image sequence that you're dragging in. So that means you don't have to remember how long this was and how big the image was. You can just drag it straight on and it works all of that out for you and places the imagery just here. Now, just to keep it consistent with what you guys are doing, this image sequence is actually a smaller resolution size. So I'm going to change it to match what you guys are doing, which is HD 720. So I can come up to composition and go to composition settings. And in here I can change the frame rate, and I can also change how big the image is. So up here I can go 1280. And if I turn off lock aspect ratio and change that to 720, like that, and then I can just relock it. What I can do here, now also I'm going to double check my frames per second. That should be 25. And you can see up here I'm now getting HD 720, 25 frames per second. Now you guys really shouldn't have to do this. You can double check your frame rate. That always comes in handy. I tend to find that because it's American software, by default, it will generally default to 30 frames a second, because that's what the Americans use for their TV. So you can double check this and change it if you need to. And I'm just going to press OK there. So you can see now I'm getting this much bigger image here, like this. Now, just so it kind of doesn't look as goofy with this guy kind of floating in space, I'm going to do what usually you would not do, and I'm going to scale that up just to kind of fill the frame. But normally you shouldn't do that, because it reduces the image quality. Okay, this is really just to sort of give you guys a little bit more of an indication of what your images will look like. You can see there it's caused this kind of thing to go a bit jagged, but I'm not too fussed. Now if you scrub through the timeline, you'll be able to see your character move like that on screen. Okay, so now we need to import the audio, and it's the exact same process as before. You can come up to File, Import, or you can right click in the bin and select Import File. And this time what we want to do is go up a couple of folders, and you want to find your sound file. And for me it's in the sound folder. And there it is there. And I'll just press open. So you can see here that comes in as Jane Cobb's Sound 10. Now, if you double click that, you should get this little panel opening up here. Oops. Okay. So with the audio, it doesn't really, you can see there that scrubbing through this doesn't really do anything. Okay. What we're going to do is drag the sound file into our composition, and you can see there it kind of lines up like that. And what we need to do is make sure that this is synchronized with the movement. So what we can do is, I'll just drop that down. What you can do is look for the preview panel just over here. And what I want to do is set, just make sure that it's set up in this manner. Okay, so what we've got is full screen is turned off, from current time is turned off, and everything else is more or less as you see it here. So if we press this button here, RAM preview, that's 0 on the keyboard, sorry, on the keypad I should say. And what that'll do, it'll run through the sequence and it'll play it. So you can see down here it's kind of doing a quick RAM render. This green line fills up. Now when your computer kind of runs out of RAM, it'll stop. So sometimes, depending on this quality setting just here, full, it might not be able to render your entire sequence. Mine's just about, and it will start to play and it will loop.
6 men came to kill me one time. And the best of them carried this. It's a Callahan full-bore autolock. Customized trigger, double cartridge thorough gauge. It is my very favorite gun.
Okay, so you can see that working there. So what we need to do now, basically, with that functioning, okay, now if you need to kind of tweak the position of the audio, you can just left click and drag this back and forth along the timeline until it lines up. Okay, but most of you should be able to just drop it straight in and just have it lined up right at the start, and it should line up with your animation without too much of an issue. Okay, so let's make a movie out of this. So what we can do is we can come up to Composition, Make Movie. And we can go to, in this case, Output Module, and select Lossless. Just click on the word Lossless. And this will pop up our Output Module settings. This is where we set up what kind of file format we want and what kind of codec we want to use. A codec is a compressor, decompressor. And that's what makes our final file size smaller. So for this, what I'm going to do is select Format, and I think I'm going to go with a QuickTime, and I'm going to set the format options to Let's go with an MPEG-4 video. Just there. Now, normally you wouldn't necessarily run with an MPEG-4 video. This is really just as an easy way of being able to submit this work to me, because I can run MPEG-4 videos very easily while I'm going through all the work. Okay, if you were going to be doing a kind of like a really high quality demo reel or something like that, then you would probably be using probably an uncompressed format, like a completely lossless format, for example, so that you can compile this with your other pieces of work that you're putting in to your show reel. Okay, in this case, just go with an MPEG-4. Make sure the quality is at 100 and make sure everything else is switched off and just press OK. So over here you'll see format options, MPEG-4, quality. Now the thing you have to remember is to tick audio output. By default it's not on, and if you don't turn it on it won't render the output for the audio. So basically you'll get a silent movie. You can leave all the options at default, just press OK. And then what we need to do is type in a file name and tell it where to save. So this is going to pop up. What we want to do is set it so that it's going directly into our project folder, which is just here. Oops, just there, sorry. And usually what I would do is I would create a folder in here called AFX or After Effects, and I would put it into there, okay, because this is basically coming out of After Effects. And it keeps it separate from your individual frames that you've rendered out of Maya and so on. So I'm just going to call this Jane Monologue 001 underscore final. Oops. There we go. Something along those lines. And just hit save. So now what we need to do is render this. Okay, and that's really easy. All we do is we press render. And you'll see the yellow line fill up. It'll tell you how long it's basically taking to render. This is seconds. And you can pause the render or stop the render if you need to. If you've realized there's a mistake, you can press stop to stop it and then, you know, go back and fix things. And when it finishes rendering, you'll hear a little chime. Like that. And that tells you that your render sequence has finished. So now what we do is we go over to our After Effects folder, and you can see there we've got the finished movie.
6 men came to kill me one time. And the best of them carried this. It's a Callahan full-bore autolock. Customized trigger, double cartridge thorough gauge. It is my very favorite gun. 6 men came to kill me one time.
So that's the process. Once you've done that, if you want, you can save your After Effects file, although you don't necessarily need to save this actual project file. Normally what you do is just go File, Save, Save, and you can just scroll, go through to your After Effects project folder and just save it. Okay, just like any other file. For this though, I'm not going to bother saving it. I'm not really going to need to. So that's it. That's the project. I hope you've enjoyed doing this little bit of animation. I hope you've learned a little bit about one process or one method of doing animation in 3D. And hopefully you end up with some really nice little lip sync animations. I'm looking forward to seeing them. So with that said, we'll finish this off here and I'll see you soon.